The galaxy was wide and full of light, but in one corner there was only fear. On small planets and lonely moons, weak alien people lived in silence. They were farmers, builders, singers, and dreamers. But they had no soldiers, no armies, no weapons strong enough to fight. Above them in the stars, a cruel race of predators ruled. They were tall, armored, and filled with hunger. To them, the weak were not neighbors or friends. To them, the weak were food, toys, and prey. Every cycle, the predators came in their black ships. Engines roared like thunder. Shadows fell over villages. The helpless ran into caves, hid under broken stones, but it never mattered. The hunters always found them. Children cried, parents begged, and the predators only laughed. They called it the hunt. It was not war, it was not battle, it was a game for them. A cruel game where the helpless were chased and devoured. The galaxy watched but stayed silent. No one dared to stand against the predators, because those who resisted were wiped out in a single night. The weak alien tribes tried everything. Some paid tribute, offering food, minerals. Even their young, others prayed to stars, hoping someone would hear them. But nothing changed. The hunters kept coming. The helpless kept dying. Legends spread among the victims. Stories whispered in the dark. Stories of a savior who might come one day. Someone not afraid of the predators. Someone who could fight back. But the people told these stories only to comfort children. No one truly believed such a savior would come. On one small planet, a family huddled in silence. They could hear the engines above. The sky glowed red as flames swallowed homes. The father held his children close. The mother whispered soft songs. "Stay quiet. Maybe they will pass us," she begged. But everyone knew the hunters never passed. They always searched, they always found. In another village, the same terror repeated. Aliens with kind eyes and gentle hands were dragged into the night. The predators enjoyed the fear more than the meal. They hunted not because they needed food. They hunted because they loved control. They loved the scream, the chase, the hopeless struggle. And yet, even in this darkness, a question began to grow. How long could this go on? How long before nothing remained but the hunters themselves? The weak races whispered to each other across hidden radios. They shared warnings, shared grief, shared prayers. And slowly, very slowly, they began to feel something strange. It was not strength, not yet. It was not courage, not yet, but it was a spark. A small spark of hope that maybe the hunt would not last forever. Still, hope was dangerous. Hope could be crushed. Every time a new victim rose, the predators crushed them. Every time a village tried to resist, fire erased it from maps. The hunters laughed at the idea that prey could ever fight back. But the galaxy is wide, wider than even the hunters could see. And sometimes fate moves in silence, far beyond their eyes, beyond their control. For in the darkness of the hunted worlds, a stranger was coming, not prey, not predator. Something else entirely, but for now the hunt continued. The weak hid, the strong hunted. And the stars above were silent witnesses. The helpless prayed, waiting, not knowing that change was closer than they dreamed. The predators thought the galaxy belonged to them. They thought no one could stand in their way. But the story was only beginning, and their greatest hunt was yet to come. The hunt had gone on for centuries. The predators believed nothing could ever change. The weak would always hide, the strong would always feast. But fate had other plans, and fate sometimes arrives quietly. Like a shadow in the night one evening, above a small farming moon, the sky lit with fire. Not the fire of the predators' ships, but something different. A single craft drifted into orbit, small, worn, and silent. It was not sleek, not powerful, not like the massive hunting cruisers. It looked fragile, almost broken. Yet inside that ship was something the galaxy had never seen before. A human, he was alone, a traveler between stars. His ship carried scars of past battles, but his eyes carried something more dangerous than weapons. They carried determination. He had crossed dark space, storms of radiation, and fields of broken ships. He did not come to hunt, he did not come to rule. He came because he had heard whispers. Whispers of the helpless. Whispers of entire worlds trapped in fear. The weak aliens saw his ship descend through clouds. They watched with wide eyes, afraid this was another hunter. But when the vessel landed, no flames followed, no soldiers stormed out. No laughter of killers filled the air. Instead, a single figure stepped down onto the dust. He moved slowly, carefully, not with the hunger of a predator, but with the calm steps of a protector. The villagers did not know who he was. They whispered from their hiding places. Is it another predator, they asked, or is it something else? Children clung to parents, afraid to hope. They had seen too many false promises before. The predators noticed too from high above. One of their patrols saw the human's ship. They laughed, thinking it was easy prey. Another fool has wandered into our territory, they said. They prepared to descend, to turn the stranger into another victim. But something about the ship troubled them. Its design was strange. Its signals unusual, and the man inside. He was not afraid. When the hunters arrived, the ground shook. Black ships dropped like knives through the air. Engines screamed, dust rose. Shadows fell across the village. The helpless screamed and ran, but the human stood still. He did not run, he did not hide. He simply raised his eyes to the sky. As if daring the predators to strike, the hunters landed with claws ready. Their leader stepped forward, tall and armored. "You are not of this system," he growled. "Who dares enter the domain of the hunt?" The human did not answer with fear. He answered with silence. His calmness was a weapon sharper than any blade. The hunters laughed, but their laughter shook. There was something in this man's stare, something they had never seen in their victims. It was not terror, it was not surrender, it was defiance, and that made them uneasy. The villagers watched from shadows. They could not believe their eyes. Someone stood against the predators. Someone did not tremble before them. Their hearts pounded. A strange feeling rising inside them was this. Courage. The hunters made the first move. One lunged forward, claws raised. The human shifted, faster than they expected. In one motion, he turned the predator's weight against him. The hunter crashed to the ground, armor dented. Silence followed. The galaxy had never seen such a thing before. The leader roared in anger. "Kill him," he ordered. But the human fought with more than strength. He fought with precision, with cunning, with experience. Every move was deliberate, every strike was meant not only to defeat but to teach. To show the helpless that the predators were not gods. They could bleed. They could fall. The hunters retreated in confusion. This was not how the hunt was meant to go. Prey did not fight back. Prey did not win. But the stranger had shattered that rule in a single clash. When the dust settled, the human stood alone. His ship behind him, the predators gone. The villagers stepped forward slowly. Still trembling, one child whispered, "What are you?" The man looked at the stars, then at the people. "I am human," he said simply. "And I am here to help." Those words spread like fire. Across hidden radios, across broken tunnels, across desperate camps, the weak repeated them again and again. A human had come, a human was not afraid. For the first time in centuries, the helpless dared to dream. Perhaps the hunt was not eternal. Perhaps the galaxy had finally found its protector. But the predators would not forget this humiliation. In their dark halls, their warlords roared in rage. They would gather greater forces. They would return, and this time they swore. The human would not escape. The hunt was changing. The hunters felt it. The helpless felt it, and deep inside, even the human knew this was only the beginning. The news of the stranger spread quickly. The weak races whispered his name, though they did not know it. They called him the human, the protector, the one who fights. For the first time in centuries, prey had hope, but hope is dangerous, and hope always draws the hunters closer. In the dark void of space, predator warships gathered. Their leaders roared in fury. "How dare a single creature defy us?" they shouted. "He made us bleed. He made us retreat." This insult could not be forgiven. So they sent more ships, faster and deadlier. This time they would not play with their food. This time they would destroy him. The human repaired his ship on the lonely moon. The villagers brought him food, tools, and whispers of gratitude. But he knew gratitude was not enough. The hunters would return, stronger, angrier. He worked through the nights, hands steady, eyes sharp. Every wire tightened, every weapon polished, every shield adjusted. He was preparing not just to survive. He was preparing to fight, and then they came. The ground shook as the sky tore open with fire. Dozens of predator ships fell from orbit. Black and sharp as blades, engines screamed like beasts. Their shadows swallowed the horizon. The villagers hid in fear, their courage trembling. They whispered, "Maybe he will run, maybe even he cannot face this." But the human did not run. He stood at the edge of the village, his ship ready behind him. His voice calm as he said, "They bleed. Remember that." The predators landed in waves, armored soldiers spilling onto the dirt. Their leader laughed, tall and cruel. "You are only one man. he said. You think you can fight the hunt alone? The human's eyes did not waver.
I do not need to be more than one, he answered.
And the first clash began. The hunters charged, claws raised, weapons flashing. But the human moved like a storm. He dodged, struck, and turned their strength against them. Every predator who lunged at him fell harder than they expected. Every strike that should have killed him met only air. His blade cut through armor. His traps exploded with fire. Smoke filled the field. Screams echoed. The hunters were not hunting anymore. They were being hunted. The villagers could not believe their eyes. They had seen battles before, always ending the same way. The predators laughing, the helpless dying. But this time the laughter stopped. This time the predators roared in anger. Because one man stood against them and he was winning. A predator tried to strike him from behind. But the human twisted, caught the blow and sent the creature crashing down. Another raised a rifle, but the human's trap ignited, sending the shot back into the hunter's chest. Each move was not just survival, it was a lesson. He was showing the helpless that the hunters were not invincible, that even monsters could fall. The battle raged for hours. Ships circled above, firing into the dirt. But the human ship answered with fire of its own. Not stronger, but smarter. Every missile found its mark. Every shield held at the right moment. He did not fight with numbers, he fought with precision, with patience, with will. At last, the predator leader stepped forward, furious. You cannot kill us all, he snarled. We are endless, we are eternal, you are nothing. The human, covered in dust and blood, raised his weapon. Then I will keep fighting until none of you remain, he said. And the leader felt something he had never felt before, fear. The clash ended with the predators retreating again, their ships dragging broken warriors into the sky. The villagers stepped out from hiding, wide-eyed and shaking. They saw bodies of hunters on the ground. They saw victory with their own eyes, and they felt something new burn in their hearts, not only hope this time, but courage. The children laughed through tears. The mothers wept with relief. The fathers bowed their heads in respect. The human did not smile, he only said, They will return. Stronger, angrier, remember this moment. Hold it in your hearts, for next time you must stand too. That night, the sky was quiet. The hunters had left, but not in triumph. They left wounded, humiliated, broken, and in their darkness. They made vows of vengeance. They would gather their fleets, their warlords, their champions. They would bring fire unlike anything the galaxy had seen. The hunt was no longer a game, it was war. And at the center of it stood one man. One human, the stranger who refused to bow, the protector who had turned the tables. The first clash was over, but the war had only begun. The first clash had ended, but the war was only beginning. The predators had been forced to retreat, their pride broken, their power shaken. But everyone knew they would return. They were too proud, too cruel, too hungry to let the insult stand. The helpless gathered around the human. They looked at him with wide eyes filled with awe and fear. To them, he was more than a man. He was a storm, a weapon, a shield. Yet when he spoke, his voice was calm. I cannot fight for you forever, he said. You must learn to fight for yourselves. At first, the villagers trembled at the idea. They had lived as prey for so long they only knew how to hide, how to run, how to beg for mercy. But the human was patient. He began with small lessons. He showed them how to build traps from broken metal, how to turn farming tools into weapons, how to use the land itself as a shield. Day by day, the helpless began to change. Children who once cried now carried wooden sticks and practiced. Mothers who once wept learned to fire stolen rifles. Fathers who bowed their heads now stood taller. It was slow, it was hard, but it was real. The human's greatest strength was not in his blade or his ship. It was in the courage he awakened in others. The predators struck again, testing the villages this time. The helpless did not scatter when the hunters landed. They found resistance waiting. Traps exploded under their feet. Arrows pierced their armor. Walls of stone slowed their charge. And behind it all, the human stood, guiding, teaching, protecting. The hunters were shocked. Never before had prey dared to resist. Never before had prey drawn blood. They roared with anger and vowed to return with even greater force. But with every battle, the helpless grew braver. Every victory, no matter how small, fed their fire. They were learning not just to survive, they were learning to fight. Across the galaxy, the story spread. Whispers carried from planet to planet. They are fighting back, the voices said. The human is teaching them, in dark tunnels and broken cities. Other helpless tribes listened, and slowly they too began to rise. The predators had ruled with fear for centuries, but fear was beginning to crack. And once fear cracks, it can never be mended still. The human knew the danger was far from over. The hunters would not forgive. The hunters would not forget. He worked harder than ever, building defenses, training fighters, preparing the weak for what was to come. He carried his burden silently, never asking for praise, never asking for reward, because he knew what was at stake. Entire worlds depended on him. The helpless began to see him not just as a warrior, but as something greater. A leader, a protector, a symbol of strength. When he walked through the villages, they bowed their heads. But he only shook his head and said, "Do not bow to me. Bow to your own courage." One night, as the stars burned above, a child asked him, "Why do you fight for us? You are not one of us." The human looked at the child and said softly, "Because no one deserves to be hunted. No one deserves chains, and if I can break those chains, then I must." Those words spread faster than fire. They became a chant, a promise, a shield in the hearts of the weak. But the predators were not blind. They saw what was happening. They saw their prey learning, resisting, fighting, and it terrified them for the first time. The hunters realized their greatest weapon was failing. Fear was slipping from their grasp, and without fear they were nothing. So the predators began to change their plans. They gathered larger fleets, summoned crueler warlords. They sharpened their claws and forged darker weapons. If the human wanted war, they would bring him war. If the helpless wanted courage, they would drown them in fire. The galaxy trembled as the predators prepared their vengeance. But the helpless no longer trembled the same way. They remembered the traps, the lessons, the victories. They remembered the human's words. "They bleed," he had told them, and they believed it now. Every battle they survived was proof. Every scar they carried was a reminder. The predators could be defeated. The human stood on the edge of the village, watching the stars, waiting for the darkness that would soon descend. He knew the war would grow fiercer, bloodier, harder, but he also knew something else. The helpless were no longer helpless, and with every passing day, the hunter's grip on the galaxy grew weaker. The hunt was no longer theirs alone. The tables were turning slowly but surely. The predators had ruled for centuries with cruelty, but now, because of one human, the prey had become something new, not prey, not victims, but fighters, and soon, very soon, the galaxy itself would rise. The predators had never known defeat. For centuries, they ruled like gods. Their claws dripped with the fear of entire worlds. Their ships cast shadows over helpless villages. Every scream, every tear, every cry had been their victory. But now something was changing. The helpless were no longer running. The helpless were no longer silent. Whispers of resistance echoed across the stars. And at the center of it all was a single name, the human. In the dark halls of the predators' fortress world, their warlords gathered, tall, armored, and cruel. They slammed their claws on the iron tables. They growled, they shouted, their voices shaking the walls. "This stranger has poisoned our prey," one roared. "He has made them believe they can resist us," another hissed. "If we allow this, the hunt will end," a third spat. Their rage burned hotter than fire, because nothing frightened them more than the loss of control. At the head of the hall sat the High Warlord, a beast larger than the rest, his armor black as night. His eyes glowed with fury as he listened. He had ruled the hunt for decades. He had crushed rebellions, burned cities, silenced entire species. Yet this one human had done what none of them could. He had made the prey fight back, and that was unforgivable. The High Warlord rose, his voice thundering. "This is no longer a hunt," he declared. "This is war, and we will not stop until the stars themselves burn." The warlords pounded their claws in agreement. They would summon their fleets. They would call their champions. They would drown the helpless in fire until not even dust remained. Across the galaxy, predator fleets gathered. Thousands of ships black and sharp as knives. Engines roared like storms. Weapons glowed with deadly light. World after world shook under their march. The hunt was over, but the slaughter had only begun. Meanwhile, the human watched from the ground. He knew this rage was coming. He had wounded the predator's pride, and predators never forgave insults. He stood on the edge of a mountain village, his eyes on the stars. He whispered, "They are gathering," and he was right. The helpless around him grew uneasy. They had learned to fight, to build, to resist, but against such fury, could they survive? Some wanted to run, others wanted to hide, but the human stood firm. "They will come," he told them, And when they come, we will not kneel. The first strike came without warning. A predator warship descended on a helpless colony. Flames swallowed forests, rivers boiled, skies cracked with fire. The helpless fought back bravely, but the predators unleashed horrors they had never seen. Monstrous war beasts, fire cannons, poison gas. Entire villages turned to ash in moments. The hunters did not fight to win. They fought to punish, to terrify, to erase hope. News of the massacre spread. The helpless wept, the survivors trembled. But even through grief, they remembered the human's words. "They bleed," he had said, and so they whispered back, "They bleed, and we will make them bleed again." The predators attacked again, and again every time the human was there. Sometimes with his ship, sometimes with his blade, always with his will unbroken. He could not save every world. He could not shield every village, but wherever he fought, the helpless stood taller, wherever he fought. The predators lost more than they gained. The High Warlord raged at every defeat. He tore apart his own soldiers in anger. He swore he would crush the human with his own claws. The warlords begged him to wait, to plan, but his pride burned too bright. He would not rest until the human was broken. Until his name was erased from every whisper, the helpless began to see the truth. The predators were powerful, yes, but they were also afraid. Afraid of losing control. Afraid of losing their throne. And that fear made them reckless. That fear made them bleed even faster. Still, the cost was heavy. Villages burned, children cried, lives were lost. The human carried these weights on his shoulders. Every scream haunted him. Every grave reminded him of the price. But he did not stop. He could not stop. Because he knew the only way forward was through the storm, the galaxy stood at the edge of change. The predators raged, the helpless resisted. The human fought with everything he had. The hunt had become war, and war had only one rule. Only the strongest would survive. The High Warlord swore the galaxy would bow again. The helpless swore they would never kneel again. And the human, standing between them, whispered into the night, "Then let us see who breaks first." The predators thought their rage would crush the galaxy. They believed fire and terror would erase the courage of the helpless. They sent fleets larger than storms. They sent armies that blotted out the stars. Every weapon, every claw, every shadow was unleashed. But rage is not the same as strength. And fury is not the same as victory. The predators burned villages, yes, they shattered cities. Yes, but with every strike, with every scream, something unexpected happened. The helpless did not break. They grew sharper, stronger, braver, and at the center of it all stood the human. He moved from world to world, a shadow of resistance. His ship was small compared to the fleets, but his mind was sharper than any warlord's. He taught the weak how to strike not with power, but with precision, not with numbers, but with cunning. Every time the predators expected easy prey, they walked into traps. Every time they hunted, they found themselves hunted. The first great reversal happened on a mining moon. The predators landed to take resources and captives, but when their claws reached for the helpless, explosives buried in the tunnels roared. The ground swallowed hunters. Ships cracked apart in fire and from the smoke. The human led the charge, the helpless, armed with stolen rifles and sharpened tools, attacked with fury for the first time in living memory. A predator army fled from prey. The story spread like wildfire. Other villages, other colonies, other hidden camps began to fight. The predators still had strength, but they no longer had fear, and without fear their grip began to slip. The helpless shared signals across the stars. They whispered one phrase again and again. "We are not prey anymore." The High Warlord raged in his throne. He threw soldiers to their deaths for failing him. He screamed that the hunt would never end, but in his heart, he felt something he had never felt before, doubt for every victory they claimed. 10 defeats followed for every helpless world destroyed. 2 more rose up, and always, the human appeared unbroken, unafraid, unstoppable. The battles grew fiercer. On one world, the predators released war beasts larger than buildings, but the human and his allies lured them into canyons. Rocks fell, the ground split, and the monsters were buried forever. On another world, fleets clashed in the skies. Predator cruisers unleashed fire that burned the atmosphere. But the human strategy turned their fire against them. Their own ships collided, burning like falling suns. Everywhere the predator struck, they found themselves bleeding. The helpless began to believe not only in the human, but in themselves. They stood taller, their voices louder, their weapons steadier. They no longer prayed for mercy. They no longer begged for life. They fought, and the predators, for the first time, began to fear their prey. The High Warlord ordered one final campaign, a storm of ships the largest ever seen, enough firepower to erase entire systems. He swore he would crush the rebellion in one strike. He swore he would tear the human apart with his own claws. The fleets gathered, the skies darkened. The galaxy trembled on the edge of destruction, but the human was ready. He had studied their patterns, their pride, their mistakes. He knew they would come in fury, blind with rage, and rage was a weakness he could use. He set traps across the stars, mining moons rigged to explode, gas clouds ready to ignite, asteroid fields turned into weapons. Every battleground was prepared, every move calculated. When the predators came, they walked straight into the humans' war. The clash shook the heavens. Predator ships screamed as explosions tore through their fleets. Their war beasts roared before falling into traps. Their champions fought with claws dripping blood. But the humans' forces did not fall. They rose higher with every strike. The helpless, once prey, now hunted their hunters, and the predators could not stop them at last. The High Warlord himself entered the battlefield, his armor black as death, his blade burning with fire. He sought the human, roaring his challenge. The human stepped forward, calm as ever. "I told you," he said. "The hunt is over." Their battle shook the ground, claw against blade, fury against will. The warlord was strong, but the human was relentless. Every strike cut deeper. Every move broke his pride until finally, the human drove him to his knees. The galaxy held its breath, and for the first time in centuries, the predator warlord bled before the eyes of the prey. The warlord roared in rage and shame, but his soldiers faltered. They had seen too much, lost too much. They began to retreat, their fleets scattering like frightened animals. The helpless raised their voices in victory. Not only had they survived, they had won. The tables had turned. The human stood among them, his blade still red. He did not smile. He did not celebrate. He only said, "This is not the end. They will return, but now you know the truth. They can be beaten." And the helpless, with fire in their eyes, answered back, "We will never kneel again." The hunt was over. The hunters had become the hunted, and the galaxy was no longer theirs. The battlefield lay silent. Smoke drifted across broken ships, shattered weapons, and the bodies of hunters and prey alike. The predators had fled, their fleets scattered into the void. The High Warlord had been wounded, his pride torn, his empire shaken, and for the first time in centuries, the helpless stood unchained. The villagers emerged from hiding. Their steps unsure at first, they looked to the human, the one who had turned the tables. He stood at the center of the ruins, his blade still in his hand. But his eyes were not on the fallen hunters. His eyes were on the survivors, on the children who no longer cried, on the mothers who no longer wept, on the fathers who now carried themselves with strength. The helpless gathered around him, voices trembling. "Is it over?" they asked. "Have we won?" The human's gaze was steady, his words soft but heavy. "It is not over," he said. "They will return, they will always return. But now you are no longer prey, now you can stand." The words spread like light through the darkness from one village to another. From one world to the next, radios carried them. Whispers carried them. Hope carried them. The helpless repeated the words again and again. "We are no longer prey." And in their hearts a fire burned brighter than ever before. Across the galaxy the predators licked their wounds. They howled in rage, but their fear grew deeper. Their warlords quarreled, their soldiers hesitated. The High Warlord roared that the hunt would never end. But doubt poisoned his words, for he had seen the truth with his own eyes. Even the strongest predator could bleed. Even the eternal hunt could be broken. The helpless rebuilt their worlds. Huts became fortresses, caves became strongholds, tools became weapons, songs became war chants. Children trained with sticks, elders shared wisdom. They were no longer just survivors. They were defenders, protectors, warriors of their own. And guiding them always was the human. He did not act as a king, he did not sit as a ruler. He walked among them as one of them. He repaired ships, he taught strategies. He lifted heavy stones with his own hands, and every act reminded them that he was not above them. He was beside them. The human was not their master. He was their protector. But even as joy filled the air, shadows lingered in the far corners of space. The predators were gathering once more. They had been humbled, yes, but not destroyed. They sharpened their claws in silence. They whispered promises of vengeance. They swore the hunt would return. Fiercer than before, the human knew this. He stood on a high ridge one night, looking out at the stars. The villagers celebrated behind him, but his eyes were far away. He could almost hear the predators growling in the dark. He could almost feel their rage burning across the void. He whispered to himself, "They will come back, but when they do, they will not find the same prey." The galaxy was different now. It had seen resistance, it had seen victory. The helpless had become fighters. The predators had become afraid. And the human had become more than a man. He was a legend, a story whispered in every shadow, a promise carried in every heart. On one world, a child asked his mother, "Who will protect us if the predators come again?" And the mother smiled softly. "We will," she said, "because the human taught us that we can." The dawn rose over broken fields. Golden light touched the ruins of battle. For the first time in centuries, the helpless looked at the sun without fear. They felt the warmth not as prey waiting to be hunted, but as people who had reclaimed their right to live. The human walked among them, quiet, steady, unshaken. He had not given them freedom. He had reminded them how to take it for themselves. But the story was not finished. In the shadows of distant galaxies, the predators still waited. Their claws sharper, their hearts darker. Their pride wounded, the hunt would rise again. The helpless would fight again. And when that day came, the human would be there, standing in the fire. Unyielding, unstoppable. The protector of the helpless, the hunter of hunters. The man who had turned the tables forever. The galaxy breathed a new dawn. Not a dawn of peace, but a dawn of strength. And in that strength was hope. Hope that even in the darkest of nights, someone would always rise, someone would always fight. Someone would always remind the helpless that they were never truly helpless. The predators thought they owned the stars. But the stars had chosen another, and his name was human.